This is the Sony CFD S70 CD cassette boombox. It's far from their best, but it's generally regarded as an acceptable choice if you're looking for a good new cassette player at an affordable price. Unfortunately, it seems to have been discontinued. It's still listed on Sony's website, but for at least the past year, none of the major retailers have it in stock anymore. So I was excited to see something that looks very similar to this Sony model, newly introduced at Walmart and being sold under their On brand for less than $40. So, is it a cheap knockoff of the Sony, or is it an acceptable substitute? Let's find out. It indeed looks very similar to the Sony, except it's actually slightly smaller and less rounded. And one thing I noticed is that whereas the Sony has this rather cheap feeling CD door and definitely not a soft eject cassette door, everything just kind of slams open and closed on this. This actually has a soft eject CD door and cassette door, so it actually feels higher quality than the Sony. Another thing I like is that whereas the Sony has a completely solid cassette door, on the new Onin model, they have a little window so you can actually see how much tape you have left. Otherwise, they both have a carrying handle and run on either 6C batteries or an AC power cord. And both have standard mechanical push-button cassette controls with the arrows going in the opposite direction of what you would expect. And the other controls are similar. On this one, you get a power button, which also switches between the different modes, volume up and down. The CD player controls repeat and random, CD playback, AM and FM band selection, programming the radio presets or the CD tracks, and a bass function, as opposed to the Sony's Mega Bass. And both have a headphone jack and line input on the side. It comes with a quick start guide and a user guide, and I don't quite understand why, because they both contain almost exactly the same information, just presented in slightly different order. So, what's the point? Why not just have one manual instead of having two that contain largely identical information? So let's hear what it sounds like first on FM radio. You need to hold down the button a couple seconds to turn it on. Now let's try AM radio. Just like the Sony, it's rather narrow band on AM, but it's acceptable. The reception is pretty good. I discovered an undocumented feature with the radio tuner. If you push the CD stop button, that switches the FM tuner between stereo and mono. So in case you're tuned to a weak FM stereo station and you're bothered by the hiss, you can push the stop button to switch it to mono, which will reduce the amount of hiss.
All news, all the time. This is 1010 Wins at 92.3 FM, New York.
Good evening, 83 degrees now at 8 o'clock. I'm Donna Vaughn, and here's what's happening. Hot day today, and there's more where that came from with our heat advisory still in effect.
Back again, just to touch you once again.
Soft Rock Classics. SoftRockRadio.net.
Here's a brief sample of the CD player. Pretty basic. You know what a CD player does, and this does it. The display is pretty small, but it at least does tell you what track you're on and the volume setting. My one complaint about the sound quality is that it does not get loud enough, especially when playing classical music on CD. This is turned all the way up, and it's just barely acceptable. It's okay for personal listening, but it definitely won't be the life of the party.
At the moment, I am directly between the front microphones, but I'm now moving over to the left front microphone. I am just starting a mechanical stopwatch, which will move with me and help you in locating the sound as I walk between and around the microphones. No, this is not 60 minutes. And to further indicate our positions, no, this isn't a sex manual, I have my little zapper with its low distortion 1.5-inch speaker. I'm now moving across the front and am stopping at center front again. I should be heard now directly between your front speakers. Now we move across to extreme right. When we get to the pink noise tests, the sounds will be electronically panned to be only in each of the 4 locations: front center, left and right front, and center rear.
And the CD player in this is also capable of playing MP3 CDs. Just keep in mind that with this tiny little display, you're obviously not going to see any artist names or track titles. It does support MP3 CDs that contain folders, but with this 3-digit display, I don't know if it might have problems playing discs that have more than 999 songs on them. But I know what you really came here to see and hear is the cassette player, and it has one of these little protective film things on the window. Oh, and there's another little piece on this display here. I like how it says tape tap bass when you're playing a cassette. So let's try it out. Nice soft eject door.
15. This thematic minute-long instrumental bed can be used for traffic reports, promos, or other station features. Extra long set of music.
There you just saw the auto stop when it reaches the end of the tape. Here's a little look inside the mechanism. I can tell it's using a knockoff of the Tanishan design. It says HS, which is one of those knockoffs. But it does have a stereo tape head and a permanent magnet erase head, and that's the trigger for the auto stop. So pretty basic mechanism. And there, looking through the window in the cassette door, you can see that is a stereo tape head. Now as for its speed accuracy and wow and flutter, the speed is about 1.3% fast, and the wow and flutter is just above 0.2% WRMS. Not great, but for a cheap boombox, it's acceptable.
If your speakers are correctly balanced, then you should hear the piano on your left-hand side, the double bass on your right-hand side, and the drums exactly midway between your 2 speakers.
Shortly, you will be receiving by mail a questionnaire from Chevrolet asking you to register your degree of satisfaction with us in many areas. If you have not had a completely positive experience in dealing with us, please contact Peter Ratalis so we may correct any oversights or problems and you can give us a good report card. We feel our customers are our biggest asset, and we intend to make every effort to make you a lifetime member of our family.
A cheap boombox like this is never going to be capable of making high-fidelity recordings. Nonetheless, for many people, the main appeal of cassette tapes is the ability to record on them, not just play them. so I wanted to give it a try anyway. So first I made a recording from the FM radio to this Memorex Type 1 tape.
CBS FM presents the 30-second song challenge.
I'm primed. Let's go.
Name all 7 songs in 30 seconds or less.
Smooth Criminal. Always Be My Baby.
Danger Zone. And you win a $100 Visa gift card.
Yes, baby! Yes, baby! Woo!
The 30-second song challenge.
All right, let's win it.
The winning returns tomorrow morning at 7:30 and 8:30 on CBS FM.
But based on past experience with that Sony boombox I showed earlier, I discovered that sometimes, even though these cheap cassette recorders were only designed to use standard Type 1 tape, sometimes they actually sound better when using Type 2 high bias tape, even though that's technically not correct to use. So I tried recording on this Sony Type 2 tape from CD, and even though it's still not high fidelity, I do think it sounds a lot better.
This division that you be the boss. Now I'd like to show you some of the valuable things your MCA Discovision system lets you do.
But regardless of what kind of tape you use, the recordings made on this are limited by a high noise floor, limited frequency response, and overly aggressive automatic recording level control. So just keep in mind, whatever you record on this is not going to sound nearly as good as what cassette tapes are capable of. The aux input can be connected to any audio component with a line level or headphone output, including a record player. This has one feature the Sony doesn't: Bluetooth wireless technology. You switch it into BT mode, and then it will show up on your mobile device as on CD boombox. And now it's paired.
So basically you've gone from a very cheap sounding cassette deck, up to near CD quality sound. Near. But
and now I'm listening to a YouTube video through Bluetooth being played through the on CD cassette boombox. Just keep in mind this Bluetooth feature is only an input, not an output, so you cannot use it to listen to your tapes or CDs through a pair of Bluetooth headphones. That won't work. There it is, cracked open, and as expected, the circuitry is highly integrated and pretty much all surface mount. It has 2.5-inch, 4-ohm, 3-watt speakers with pretty decent sized magnets on them. And the CD player mechanism has rubber shock mounts to help prevent it from skipping. There's the cassette mechanism. It does have a metal flywheel, but it's very thin, so it probably doesn't have that much effect on improving the speed stability. There's the recording circuitry, and that's the record playback switch, but I don't see any AC biased oscillator coil here, which means it's using DC bias recording. The motor is using the part number of a Mobuchi motor, but was not made by them, nor is it pretending to be. It says TS, so it's one of these generic Chinese motors. And down there you can see the speed adjustment trimmer. There I adjusted the speed and now it's almost perfect. All it needed was a very slight counterclockwise adjustment of that speed trimmer on the motor. Unfortunately, as is typical for these Tanishin knockoff mechanisms, there is no auto stop when you're rewinding or fast forwarding, nor is there a clutch. So when it reaches the end of the tape, it's relying on the belt slipping on the pulley to keep it from damaging anything. So when you're rewinding and it reaches the end, you better hit the stop button pretty soon, otherwise you're going to wear out that belt. The main circuit board doesn't say who designed or manufactured it, but it says YM2245 main board, revision 1, and it has a date of September 23rd, 2023. And there you can see the internal antennas for Bluetooth, which is just a zigzag on the circuit board, and AM radio, which is a ferrite bar. The ON portable CD cassette boombox is obviously far from perfect, but at the bargain price of around $35 as of making this video, I really can't find too much fault with it. It's an inexpensive way to dip your toes in the world of playing CDs and cassette tapes. So if you just want something cheap to get started, to see what all the fuss is about, it's good enough. And who knows, maybe it will help encourage Sony to bring back their CD cassette boombox, or better yet, introduce a new version of it that also features Bluetooth.
Downy Rinse and Refresh. Break up with stinky clothes.
Rinse it out.
Every now and then I get a little bit tired of the stinks that just will never come out.
Oh, Downy the rinse change.
Every now and then I rinse it out. One wash and it delivers. One wash, it smells so clean. Downy Rinse and Refresh, it's a dream.
Downy Rinse and Refresh.